The blood came faster than I expected. It spread across Jake's white football jersey in dark, pulsing waves, soaking through the fabric before I could even process what I was seeing. My son's face had gone the color of old newspaper, and his eyes, those same brown eyes that used to light up when I taught him to throw a spiral in our backyard, were starting to lose focus. "Dad," he said, and the word came out wet and wrong. My hands were already covered in it. The warm, slick feeling made my stomach turn, but I couldn't let go. I pressed down harder on his side, right where the jagged metal fence post had torn through when he'd tried to vault it after practice. Stupid. Showing off for his teammates, being 16 and invincible just like I'd been once. "Someone call 911. I screamed toward the parking lot behind Lincoln High's practice field. Parents were running toward us now, their faces blurring together in my peripheral vision. "Now!" But it was Saturday evening in Millbrook, Ohio, and the nearest hospital was 23 minutes away on a good day. The way Jake's breathing was starting to sound, shallow and quick, like a dog panting, told me we didn't have 23 minutes. That's when I heard her voice. "Tom, let me help." I looked up. Dr. Maya Patel was pushing through the small crowd that had formed, a canvas bag already in her hands. She wore running clothes, those expensive moisture-wicking leggings, and a zip-up jacket that marked her as someone who jogged through the neighborhood at dawn while the rest of us were still drinking our first coffee. "Stay back," I said automatically. The words came out harsher than I meant, but my hands were inside my son's body, basically, holding pressure on what I desperately hoped wasn't something vital. "Ambulance is on the way. Tom, I'm a doctor. Let me assess him." She was already kneeling beside us, but I shifted my body slightly, blocking her. "You're not that kind of doctor." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I saw something flicker across her face. Hurt, maybe, or anger, but she didn't back away. "I'm exactly the kind of doctor your son needs right now," she said quietly. "Please." 3 weeks earlier, I'd said worse. Much worse. It had been at the neighborhood cookout that Linda insisted we attend, one of those end-of-summer gatherings where everyone pretended they actually enjoyed small talk with people whose names they'd forgotten by October. The Hendersons had just moved out, and the Patels had moved into the Blue Colonial on the corner of Maple and Fifth. I'd been standing by the grill with Dave Kowalski and Marcus Chen talking about the Browns' upcoming season when the topic of the new neighbors came up. "She's a doctor," Dave had said, nodding toward Maya, who was helping her husband set up lawn chairs. "Has her own practice over on Westwood." "What kind?" Marcus asked. "Osteopathic medicine, I think. Do instead of MD. I'd snorted before I could stop myself. The beer was my third and my filter was pretty much gone. "So not a real doctor." Dave had looked uncomfortable. "Tom." "What?" "I'm just saying. There's a reason they're DOs and not MDs. Couldn't get into actual medical school, probably. It's like the participation trophy version of being a physician." Marcus had tried to change the subject, but I was on a roll. The frustration of the week, getting passed over for regional manager again, Jake's attitude lately, the fight Linda and I had about her going back to school, it all came pouring out in the form of casual cruelty towards someone I'd never even met. "My uncle went to one of those DO places," I'd continued. "Basically spent half his time learning about holistic treatment and crystal energy or whatever. Meanwhile, real doctors are actually learning medicine." "I don't think that's quite," Dave started. "I'm serious. You want someone doing surgery on you, you go to an MD. You want someone to tell you to drink more water and reduce stress. You see a DO or a life coach. Same difference." Maya had been 20 feet away, close enough to hear every word. I'd known it the moment she'd turned around, her smile freezing in place as our eyes met. Her husband, Rahul, I'd later learn, had put his hand on her shoulder and said something quiet. She'd nodded, set down the stack of paper plates she'd been carrying, and walked into her house without a word. Linda had found me 10 minutes later. "What is wrong with you?" she'd hissed, pulling me away from the grill. Her fingers had dug into my elbow hard enough to bruise. "Do you have any idea how offensive that was?" "I was just making conversation. You were being an asshole." Linda never swore, which is how I knew I'd really crossed a line. "That woman is a board-certified physician. She did the same residency training as any MD. You know what a DO is? It's someone who spent extra time learning hands-on techniques and whole-body care on top of everything regular doctors learn." "How do you know all this?" "Because I actually talked to her instead of making assumptions based on letters after her name." Linda's face had been flushed with anger and embarrassment. "She specializes in emergency medicine, Tom. She worked in trauma units in Cleveland before moving here, and you just told half the neighborhood she's basically a fraud." I'd felt the first stirrings of shame then, but pride had kept me from acknowledging it. "I didn't say she was a fraud." "You might as well have." Linda had released my arm and stepped back, looking at me like I was a stranger. "Sometimes I wonder what happened to the man I married. The one who used to think before he spoke." She'd left the cookout early. I'd stayed another hour out of stubbornness, then driven home alone to find her already asleep, or pretending to be, with her back to my side of the bed. I hadn't apologized to Maya, hadn't even acknowledged what I'd said, and now, 3 weeks later, my son was bleeding out on the grass of his high school football field, and the woman I'd humiliated was the only person with medical training within miles. "Tom," her voice was gentle but firm, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Jake's going into shock. Look at his skin, it's cold and clammy. His pulse is rapid and weak. That means he's losing blood faster than his body can compensate." "I know that," I snapped, but my voice cracked. "That's why I'm putting pressure." "You're putting pressure on the wrong place." She moved closer, and I could smell her perfume, something light and floral that seemed absurdly normal given the circumstances. "The fence post punctured his flank, but the blood is pooling from a different angle. The laceration you're compressing isn't the main bleeder." "How do you—" "Because I've seen this injury a dozen times. Let me help him." Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw something that cut through my panic and pride: absolute certainty. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew that if I didn't let her help, Jake was going to die. My hands were shaking. "What do I do?" "Keep pressure right there for now. Don't move." She opened her canvas bag. It was her running pack, I realized, the one she probably carried on her dawn jogs around the neighborhood. She pulled out a small first aid kit, the kind serious runners keep for emergencies. "I'm going to need to see the wound clearly. The ambulance is still 15 minutes out at minimum. Jake doesn't have 15 minutes. She was already cutting away Jake's jersey with a pair of compact scissors, her movements quick and efficient. "Trust me, Tom. I know you don't want to, but trust me anyway." Behind us, someone was crying. I heard Coach Patterson's voice on the phone with 911, describing the location and the injury. I heard Jake's teammate Tyler saying, oh God," over and over, but all I could focus on was Maya's hands as she exposed the wound. It was worse than I'd thought. The fence post had torn a gash about 4 inches long, jagged and deep, just below Jake's ribcage. But she was right. The blood wasn't coming from where I'd been pressing. It was coming from a smaller puncture higher up, one I hadn't even seen. "Arterial bleeding," Maya said, more to herself than to me. "Okay, Tom, I need you to move your hands to where I show you. Can you do that?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good. When I count to 3, shift your pressure here." She pointed to a spot about 2 inches from where my hands were, and press down firmly. "Don't be gentle. We need to occlude the artery." "What if I—" "You won't hurt him more than he's already hurt. 1, 2, 3. I moved my hands. Fresh blood welled up immediately, but Maya was ready with a thick pad of gauze, pressing it down and layering it with more before covering my hands with hers, adding her weight to mine. "Perfect," she said. "You're doing great." Jake made a sound, a weak moan, and tried to move. "Jake, honey, I need you to stay very still," Maya said, her voice shifting into something warm and reassuring. "I'm Dr. Patel from down the street. You're going to be okay, but I need you to not move right now. Can you do that for me?" "Hurts," Jake whispered. "I know it does. Your dad's here, and we're taking care of you." She looked up at the crowd that had gathered. "I need everyone to step back and give us space. Someone get me any clean towels or shirts you have, and I need someone to elevate his legs. Just lift them up about 12 inches and hold them there. It'll help with blood flow to his vital organs." Coach Patterson stepped forward immediately, carefully lifting Jake's legs. "Good," Maya said. "Everyone else, please move back. He needs air." The crowd shuffled backward, though no one left entirely. I heard someone say they'd called Jake's mother. Linda must be on her way from her Saturday errands. The thought of having to tell her what happened made my chest tight. "Tom, look at me!" Maya's voice cut through my spiral. "Stay present. Jake needs you here." I focused on her face. She looked completely calm, completely in control, even though her hands were covered in my son's blood. "How do you know what to do?" I asked. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Because I'm a doctor. A real one." The shame hit me like a physical blow. Of all the moments for my words to come back to haunt me, it had to be this one, when I was literally dependent on the expertise of the woman I dismissed as less than. "I'm sorry," I said, and the words felt completely inadequate. "What I said at the cookout, Not now," she said firmly. "Right now, we focus on Jake. Everything else can wait." She checked his pulse again, her fingers on his wrist, counting silently. Her face showed concern, but not panic. "His pulse is stabilizing," she said. "The pressure is working. As long as we maintain it until the paramedics arrive, he should be okay." "Should be? He's lost a lot of blood. He'll need transfusions, surgery to repair the damage, but he's young and healthy, and we stopped the worst of the bleeding." She met my eyes. "He's going to make it, Tom." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. In the distance, I finally heard it, the wail of an ambulance siren, still far away but getting closer. Jake's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and scared. "Dad!" "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." I wanted to touch his face, to smooth back his hair the way I used to when he was little, but I couldn't move my hands. "You're going to be fine. The ambulance is almost here." "Mom's gonna kill me," he mumbled, and despite everything, I almost laughed. "She's going to kill both of us," I said. Maya kept her hands over mine, maintaining the pressure, monitoring his breathing and pulse. She asked him questions, his name, what day it was, if he could feel his toes, keeping him conscious and alert. The ambulance screamed into the parking lot, and 2 paramedics came running with a stretcher and equipment. Maya didn't move until they were right beside us, and then she gave them a rapid-fire briefing that sounded like a different language. Arterial laceration, estimated blood loss, interventions performed, vital signs. They nodded, impressed, and one of them said, "Great job, Doc. You probably saved his life." "Can I ride with him?" I asked as they transferred Jake to the stretcher, finally allowing me to take my hands off his side. "Are you family? I'm his father. Let's go." I stood on shaking legs, looking down at my hands. They were completely covered in drying blood, dark and rust-colored. Maya stood too, equally covered, but somehow still composed. "Thank you," I said, and the words felt like trying to drain an ocean with a teaspoon. "I don't know how to—" "Go with your son," she said gently. "We'll talk later." I wanted to say more. I needed to say more. But the paramedics were already loading Jake into the ambulance, and I couldn't waste another second. As I climbed in beside him, I looked back one last time. Maya stood in the middle of the football field, her running clothes stained with blood, watching us go. Behind her, the sun was setting over the goalposts. painting the sky in shades of orange and red. I'd spent 3 weeks thinking I was better than her. It had taken less than 10 minutes for her to prove that she was the better person in every way that mattered. The ambulance doors closed, and we raced toward the hospital, sirens screaming into the gathering dusk of an Ohio evening that had changed everything. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. I'd been sitting in the same plastic chair for 3 hours, my hands finally clean but still feeling sticky, while surgeons worked on Jake somewhere behind the double doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Linda sat beside me, her hand in mine, though neither of us had spoken in the last 45 minutes. When she'd arrived at the hospital, still carrying grocery bags that she'd forgotten to put down, she'd simply looked at me and asked, "Is he alive?" "Yes, in surgery." She'd nodded once, set the groceries on the floor, and sat down beside me. It wasn't until later, after a nurse had briefed us on Jake's condition, stable, receiving transfusions, undergoing repair of the damaged artery, that she'd asked what happened. I told her everything, the fence, the blood, my panic, and Maya. Linda's grip on my hand had tightened when I got to that part. She was there. She was jogging by when it happened. She had a first aid kit in her running pack. I stared at the scuff marks on the linoleum floor. Linda, she knew exactly what to do. The paramedic said if she hadn't stopped the bleeding when she did. I couldn't finish the sentence. "I need to call her," Linda said, "to thank her." "I know. Tom." She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes for the first time since she'd arrived. "Do you understand what could have happened if she hadn't been there? If she'd decided that after what you said, she didn't owe us anything?" "I know. Do you? Because the man I married, the real one, not whoever you've been lately, would never have said something so cruel to begin with." The words stung because they were true. I'd been different lately, angrier, more dismissive, taking out my frustrations on everyone around me, from Linda to Jake to complete strangers who'd done nothing to deserve it. "I got passed over again," I said quietly, "for regional manager." "I know, you told me. They gave it to Derek, 28 years old, and he's been there half as long as me." Linda sighed. "And that has what to do with insulting our neighbor?" "Nothing. Everything." I pulled my hand free and ran it through my hair. "I don't know. I feel like I'm drowning, Lynn. Like everything I thought my life would be by now is just not happening. And instead of dealing with it, I'm lashing out at people who don't deserve it." "That's the first honest thing you've said to me in months." Before I could respond, the surgeon appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs. We both stood immediately. "Mr. and Mrs. Breslin, I'm Dr. Jameson. Jake's out of surgery and doing well." The relief was so intense, I had to sit back down. Dr. Jameson sat across from us, his manner professional but kind. "The fence post caused significant trauma to his external oblique and damaged a branch of the deep circumflex iliac artery. We've repaired the vessel and the muscle tissue. He lost about 40% of his blood volume, but with the transfusions and fluids, his vitals are strong." "Will he recover fully?" Linda asked. "Barring complications, yes. He'll need 6 to 8 weeks of recovery, no contact sports for at least 3 months. But he's young and healthy. He should heal completely." "Can we see him?" "He's in recovery now. Another hour or so, and you can visit briefly. He'll be groggy from the anesthesia." Dr. Jameson paused. "I understand there was someone at the scene who provided emergency care." "Our neighbor," I said, "Dr. Maya Patel." "Is she a trauma surgeon?" "Emergency medicine, I think." Dr. Jameson nodded approvingly. "Well, she did everything right. The pressure she applied, keeping him from moving, recognizing the arterial bleed. If she'd tried to transport him before the ambulance arrived, or if she'd compressed the wrong site, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." After he left, Linda called Maya. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but it was enough. Maya, it's Linda Breslin. Yes, he's out of surgery. He's going to be okay. The surgeon said you saved his life. I know, you were just doing what needed to be done, but I can't thank you enough. Tomorrow? Yes, of course. We'd love that. Thank you. Really. She hung up and looked at me. She's bringing dinner tomorrow night. Says we'll be too exhausted to cook. Linda, you're going to apologize to her properly. Not some half-assed sorry while you're covered in blood and terrified. A real apology. I will. And you're going to figure out why you said what you said in the first place. Because I can't keep living with this version of you, Tom. I won't. She wasn't threatening divorce, not yet, but the implication hung between us like smoke. We finally got to see Jake around midnight. He looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, his skin still pale, but with better color than before. Tubes and monitors connected him to machines that beeped steadily, reassuringly. His eyes opened when we came in. "Mom? Hey, baby." Linda was at his side immediately, kissing his forehead. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck." His voice was hoarse. "Dad, you okay?" Why, the question surprised me. "You're the one who had surgery, buddy." "Yeah, but you looked pretty freaked out before." He tried to shift position and winced. "Dr. Patel said you did good. Kept the pressure on like she told you." "You remember that?" "Some of it. It's kind of fuzzy." His eyes drooped. "She was nice. Kept telling me I'd be okay." "She was right," Linda said softly. Jake fell back asleep within minutes, and we sat with him for a while longer before a nurse gently suggested we go home and rest. Visiting hours would resume at 8. The drive home was quiet. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed the light was still on in the Patels' living room. Through the window, I could see Maya and Rahul sitting on their couch, talking. "She probably can't sleep," Linda said. "That kind of adrenaline takes hours to wear off. Should I go talk to her now?" "No, let her rest. Tomorrow is soon enough." Inside our house, everything looked exactly as we'd left it that morning. Jake's cereal bowl still in the sink, the TV remote on the coffee table, Linda's student papers spread across the dining room table. Normal life, frozen in time before everything changed. I took a shower, watching Jake's blood circle the drain until the water ran clear. When I came out, Linda was sitting on the edge of our bed, still dressed, staring at nothing. "I can't stop thinking about what the surgeon said," she whispered. 40% blood loss. Tom, that's... "I know. If she hadn't been there. But she was." I sat beside her. "She was there and she knew what to do, and Jake's going to be fine. Because of her, because of the woman you called a fake doctor." I had no response to that. Linda turned to look at me, really look at me, in a way she hadn't in months. "What's happening to us, Tom? When did we become these people?" "What do you mean?" "You're angry all the time." "I'm exhausted all the time. We barely talk anymore except to coordinate schedules. Jake's been acting out. Did you know he got detention twice last month?" "What? For what?" "Exactly. You didn't know because you didn't ask. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd just lecture him without trying to understand why." She stood up and started getting ready for bed. "We're failing each other. We've been failing each other for a while now. Lynn, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because today scared me in more ways than one." She paused at the bathroom door. "I saw who you've become, and I saw who you could still be. The man who kept pressure on his son's wound even though he was terrified. The man who listened to someone he'd wronged because it was the right thing to do. That's the same person, is it? Because most days I don't recognize you anymore." She closed the bathroom door, and I heard the water start running. I sat on the bed, still in my towel, thinking about everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave Kowalski. "Heard about Jake. Thank God he's okay. Let us know if you need anything." Then Marcus, "Praying for your family, man. Jake's a tough kid. And finally, from a number I didn't recognize, this is Maya. Just wanted to let you know I'm thinking of Jake and your family. Get some rest if you can. MP. I stared at that last message for a long time. The kindness of it. The genuine concern from someone who had every right to ignore us completely. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, "Thank you for everything. I'll never be able to repay you." Her response came almost immediately. "You don't need to repay me. I did what any doctor would do. Sleep well, Tom." But we both knew that wasn't true. Any doctor might have provided the medical care, but not every doctor would have pushed past personal hurt to help the family of someone who'd publicly humiliated them. She'd chosen to be the bigger person when I'd given her every excuse not to be. Linda came out of the bathroom in her pajamas, her face scrubbed clean, but showing every bit of the day's stress. She got into bed without looking at me, turning off her bedside lamp and settling on her side. I climbed in beside her, leaving my lamp on for a moment longer. "Lynn?" I said softly. "Yeah? I'm going to fix this. Whatever I need to do, therapy, medication, whatever, I'll do it. I don't want to be this person anymore." She was quiet for so long I thought she might have fallen asleep. Then, "I hope you mean that." "I do." "Good." She reached back and found my hand in the darkness. "Because I miss you, the real you." I held her hand and tried to remember the last time we'd fallen asleep like this, connected. It had been months, maybe longer. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing on the street. Through our bedroom window, I could see the Patel's house, the living room light finally dark. I thought about tomorrow, the apology I needed to make, the conversation I needed to have, the work I needed to do to become someone worth my wife's trust and my son's respect again. But mostly, I thought about Maya's hands on mine, guiding them to the right spot, her voice calm and certain in the chaos. "You're doing great," she'd said. At the time, she'd been talking about keeping pressure on Jake's wound, but maybe, I thought as sleep finally pulled me under, maybe she'd also been talking about something bigger, about not giving up even when everything feels wrong, about being present when it matters most, about becoming the person you're supposed to be, even when you've forgotten how. Sunday afternoon arrived with unseasonable warmth for late September in Ohio. Linda and I had just returned from the hospital, where Jake was fully awake and complaining about the hospital food, which we took as a positive sign, when Maya's SUV pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I watched her and Rahul get out, carrying multiple containers of food. My stomach twisted with anxiety. All morning, I'd been rehearsing what to say, but every version sounded inadequate. Linda answered the door before they could knock, her smile genuine but tired. "Please come in. You didn't have to bring so much." "Indian food freezes well," Maya said warmly, though I noticed she didn't quite meet my eyes. "Rahul made his chicken curry. It's Jake's favorite, apparently, though I'm not sure how he knows that." "Saturday morning pickup basketball," Rahul explained, following Linda to the kitchen. "Your son has a very specific pre-game ritual involving curry and trash talk." It was such a normal interaction, neighbors being neighborly, but it felt surreal given everything that had happened. I stood awkwardly in the hallway, watching them unpack containers while making small talk about Jake's recovery timeline and physical therapy options. Maya had changed from her blood-stained running clothes into jeans and a soft blue sweater. She looked tired, I realized. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. "Tom, can you help me with drinks?" Linda's voice was pointed, giving me a job so I wouldn't just stand there uselessly. I grabbed glasses from the cabinet while she poured iced tea. She leaned close and whispered, "Now would be good." My mouth went dry. Right. Yeah. Back in the living room, Maya and Rahul had settled on the couch. I sat in the armchair across from them, suddenly aware of how formal this all felt. "Dr. Patel, Maya," I started, then stopped. The words I'd practiced evaporated. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something complicated in her expression. Not anger exactly, something more like weariness. "I need to apologize," I said, "for what I said at the cookout. It was ignorant and cruel, and you didn't deserve it." "No," she said quietly, "I didn't." Rahul reached over and took her hand. Linda sat beside me, a united front of married couples, but the dynamic was all wrong. They were the ones who were solid, while Linda and I were barely holding together. "I don't have an excuse," I continued. "I was frustrated about work, about my life, and I took it out on you. That's not okay. Nothing makes that okay." Maya was silent for a moment. Then, "Do you know what it's like to spend 4 years in medical school, 4 years in residency, constantly having to prove that you're just as qualified as your MD colleagues? To have patients request a real doctor, even though you have the exact same training in emergency medicine?" I'm not finished. Her voice was gentle but firm. "You're not the first person to dismiss osteopathic medicine. You won't be the last. But what hurt was that you said it loudly, publicly, about someone you'd never met. You didn't ask about my training or my experience. You just decided I was less than and announced it to our entire neighborhood. The shame was physical. I wanted to look away but forced myself to maintain eye contact. You're right. Everything you're saying is right, and I'm sorry. I know you are. You were sorry yesterday too, covered in your son's blood." She leaned forward slightly. "But I need you to understand something, Tom. I didn't help Jake because I wanted to prove you wrong. I helped him because that's what doctors do. That's what people do when they see someone in crisis." "I know. Do you? Because when I ran over to help, your first instinct was to push me away. Even with your son bleeding out, even with no other medical professional around, you still couldn't bring yourself to trust my expertise." That landed like a punch. Because she was right. I'd told her to stay back, even in the worst moment of my life. Rahul spoke for the first time, his voice measured. "Maya barely slept last night. She kept waking up checking her phone for updates about Jake. She does that after every serious call, replays it, wondering if she missed something, if she could have done more." "I'm fine, Rahul," Maya said. "No, you're not, and that's the point." He looked at me directly. "My wife saves lives regularly. She's brilliant at her job, but she still carries every patient with her, especially the young ones. She'll be carrying Jake for a while." I hadn't thought about that. The emotional weight she must be carrying from yesterday. I'd been so focused on my own guilt and Jake's recovery that I hadn't considered what it cost her to act with such calm certainty while my son's life was in her hands. "I didn't know," I said quietly, "about any of this. The training, the discrimination you face, the toll it takes." "Most people don't," Maya said, "but you could have asked before making assumptions." Linda shifted beside me. "Maya, I know this doesn't make up for what Tom said, but I want you to know that we both, our whole family, we're grateful doesn't even begin to cover it. You saved our son's life. We'll never forget that. And I'll never forget what I said," I added. "It's going to stick with me, as it should." Maya studied my face for a long moment. Then some of the tension seemed to leave her shoulders. "I appreciate that. Both of you." "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yesterday, when you ran over, you could have just called 911 and walked away. After what I'd said, no one would have blamed you. Why didn't you?" She tilted her head, considering the question. "Because Jake isn't responsible for his father's mistakes, and because, honestly, I don't think I'm capable of walking away from someone who needs medical help. It's not in me. Even when the person asking for help doesn't deserve it. Even then." She smiled slightly. And it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since before the cookout, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small, petty part of me that enjoyed proving you wrong. Rahul laughed. She's being modest. On the drive home yesterday, she definitely said, "I hope Tom Breslin feels like an absolute idiot." Rahul! What? You did say it, and he should feel like an idiot. Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. I do. Trust me, I really do. The conversation shifted then, becoming easier. Linda asked about their move to Millbrook, and Maya told us about growing up in Cleveland, meeting Rahul in medical school, working in trauma centers, in rough neighborhoods before deciding they wanted to raise their future kids somewhere quieter. Though we're reconsidering that plan, Rahul joked, since apparently small-town Ohio has teenagers vaulting chain-link fences. We talked about Jake's recovery, about the physical therapy he'd need, about whether he'd be able to play football next season. Maya explained the healing process in detail, the way scar tissue would form, the importance of gradual exercise, the mental component of recovering from trauma. "He'll probably have nightmares," she said, "flashbacks to the moment of injury. That's completely normal. Don't dismiss them or tell him to just be tough. Let him talk about it if he wants to." Linda made notes on her phone, asking questions about what to watch for, when to worry. This was the version of Maya I'd denied existed. Knowledgeable, patient, genuinely caring about her patients even after the immediate crisis had passed. At some point, the conversation turned to my job. I hadn't meant to bring it up, but Linda mentioned my frustration with work, and suddenly I was explaining the promotion I'd lost, the younger colleague who'd gotten it, the feeling of being stuck. Maya listened without judgment. "That sounds really hard. Feeling overlooked after you've put in years of work. It doesn't excuse what I said to you. No, it doesn't, but it helps me understand where you were coming from." She paused. "Can I tell you something? When I applied for the position here in Millbrook, there was an MD candidate with less experience than me. The hospital board spent 3 extra weeks deliberating because they weren't sure about hiring a DO for their emergency department." Seriously? Seriously. I had to give a presentation explaining what osteopathic medicine is and why my degree didn't make me less qualified. In 2024. She shook her head. "But I got the job because my trauma experience spoke for itself. And now I'm the head of emergency medicine for 2 counties. How did you not become bitter about it?" "Who says I didn't?" She smiled wryly. "I had plenty of moments of anger and frustration, still do sometimes, but I had people in my corner. Rahul, my family, colleagues who respected my work, who reminded me that other people's ignorance wasn't my problem to carry. I wish I'd had that perspective when I got passed over," I admitted. "The difference is, you did have people in your corner. Linda, your son, probably friends and neighbors who think you're great at what you do. But instead of leaning on them, you lashed out at someone who had nothing to do with your situation." It was a hard truth, delivered kindly but firmly. I nodded. "You're right." We stayed for another hour, the conversation meandering through easier topics, favorite restaurants in Millbrook, the upcoming school year, whether the Browns would actually be competitive this season. Consensus, probably not. When they finally stood to leave, Linda hugged Maya tightly. "Thank you for everything, for the food, for the conversation, but especially for saving Jake." "You're welcome." Maya hugged her back. "Bring him by once he's feeling better. Rahul makes excellent chocolate chip cookies." At the door, I offered my hand to shake, but Maya surprised me by pulling me into a brief hug instead. "Take care of yourself, Tom, and take care of your family." "I will, I promise." After they left, Linda and I stood in the doorway, watching them walk back to their house. The evening sun cast long shadows across the quiet street. "She's really something," Linda said softly. "Yeah, she is." "Are you going to mean it? What you said about fixing things?" I looked at my wife. Her tired eyes, her worried expression, the grey hair she'd started getting this year that she hated, but I found beautiful. I'm going to try. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. We went inside and reheated some of the curry Maya and Rahul had brought. It was delicious, complex and warming, the kind of food made by someone who actually knew what they were doing in the kitchen. While we ate, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "When are you guys coming back? Hospital food is actual torture." Linda laughed for the first time all weekend. "Tell him we'll bring him curry tomorrow." "He'll probably cry tears of joy." "Good. He should suffer a little longer for scaring us like that." But her smile was fond, and I knew she was already planning what else to bring him tomorrow. Magazines, his favorite snacks, the phone charger he'd inevitably forgotten. That night, after cleaning up and settling into bed earlier than usual, I found myself thinking about what Maya had said about carrying her patients, about how she'd probably carry Jake, the blood, the fear in his eyes, the gamble she'd taken that her intervention would work for a long time. I'd never considered that before, that saving someone might also be a burden. "Linda," I said into the darkness, "do you think I can actually change, really change, not just temporarily?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think you can if you actually do the work. Therapy, like you mentioned. Maybe talking to your doctor about whether you're depressed. Actually communicating with me instead of bottling everything up." "What if I try and fail?" "Then you try again." She rolled over to face me, her eyes catching the moonlight from the window. "But Tom, you have to actually try, not just say you will because you're scared I'll leave. You have to want to be better for yourself." "I do want that. I'm just not sure I remember how to be better." "Then we'll figure it out together, but I can't do it for you." I reached for her hand in the darkness and held it, feeling the familiar calluses from years of grading papers with a pen, the small scar on her thumb from that time we'd tried to build a bookshelf together. "Tomorrow, I'm going to find a therapist," I said, "and I'm going to have a real conversation with Jake about what's been going on with him at school, and I'm going to stop walking around angry at the world." "One day at a time," Linda said. "That's all anyone can do." Outside, the neighborhood was settling into night. Lights flickered off in windows up and down the street. Somewhere, a dog barked. The normal rhythms of suburban Ohio life continued, indifferent to the small dramas playing out inside each house. But in the Patel house across the way, I imagine Maya was probably still awake, replaying yesterday's events, checking her medical decisions against her training, carrying the weight of my son's life in her hands, and in our house I lay awake too, thinking about second chances and the people who give them to us, even when we don't deserve them. Tomorrow, I would start being better. Tonight I just held my wife's hand and listened to her breathing slow into sleep, grateful for the gift of one more day to figure it all out. 3 months later, the first snow of December fell on Millbrook, turning the neighborhood into something from a postcard. I stood at the kitchen window watching it accumulate on the Patel's roof across the street, thinking about how much had changed since September. Jake was in the living room doing physical therapy exercises, complaining loudly about how boring they were. Linda was at the dining room table grading papers, normal Sunday afternoon sounds in a normal Sunday afternoon life, except nothing felt quite normal anymore. Normal had shifted, recalibrated itself around new truths and hard-won changes. "Dad," Jake called, "can you spot me on this one? I'm supposed to hold the position for 30 seconds. I set down my coffee and went to help him. He was doing a modified plank, strengthening his core muscles that had been damaged by the fence post. His scar was still pink and raised. It would fade over time, the doctors said, but it would always be there. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Tight, but better than last week." He held the position, breathing carefully. "Doctor," Patel says if I keep up with therapy, I can probably play football next fall. You still want to? He looked up at me, surprised. Why wouldn't I? Just checking. It's okay if you don't, you know. After what happened. Dad, it was a stupid accident. I'm not going to let it ruin football for me. He dropped back to his knees, breathing hard. Besides, I need to get a scholarship. Someone in this family has to be responsible for their future. The jab was gentle, but it landed. Jake had become more direct with me since the accident, calling me out when I slipped into old patterns. It had been uncomfortable at first, but Linda had encouraged it, and our therapist had agreed it was healthy. Yes, our therapist. Linda and I had been going to couples counseling for 2 months now. I'd also been seeing Dr. Chen individually, working through the depression and anxiety that had been building for years. It turned out that getting passed over for promotion wasn't the cause of my anger. It was just the thing that made it impossible to ignore anymore. "How's the college search going?" I asked. "Good. I'm looking at schools with strong pre-med programs." That was new. "Since when do you want to be a doctor?" "Since I saw what Dr. Patel did for me, and I've been volunteering at the hospital on Saturdays." "Did Mom tell you?" "She hadn't." "What do you do there?" "Just basic stuff. Delivering flowers, helping patients to appointments, talking to people who don't have visitors. It's actually pretty cool." He started his next exercise, leg raises this time. Dr. Patel suggested it. She said if I'm serious about medicine, I should see what it's really like beyond the dramatic stuff. I'd known that Maya and Jake had stayed in touch. She checked on his recovery every few weeks. But I hadn't realized the relationship had deepened into mentorship. "That's great, Jake." "Really?" "Yeah." He paused mid-raise. "She's pretty amazing, huh? I can't believe you thought she wasn't a real doctor." "Your mom told you about that?" "Mom tells me a lot of things now, since you guys started actually talking to each other again." He resumed his exercises. "I'm glad you apologized to her, to both of them." "Me too." Linda appeared in the doorway. "Tom, Maya just texted. She and Rahul are hosting a holiday party next Saturday and want to know if we can come." My first instinct was to make an excuse. Social gatherings still made me anxious, especially ones where I'd have to make small talk with people who'd witnessed my worst moment, but I was working on that instinct, learning to push through discomfort instead of avoiding it. "Tell her yes," I said. "We'd love to." Linda smiled and returned to her grading. Jake finished his exercises and headed upstairs to shower, leaving me alone with the falling snow and my thoughts. The past 3 months had been the hardest of my life. Not because of any single catastrophic event, but because of the daily work of changing who I was. Catching myself before saying something dismissive. Actually listening when Linda talked, instead of just waiting for my turn to speak. Being present with Jake, instead of distracted by my phone or my own resentments. Dr. Chen had helped me understand that my anger came from feeling powerless, at work, in my marriage, in my life generally. And that I'd been trying to regain power by putting other people down, by being the one who got to judge and dismiss and decide who was worthy. "You've been playing a character," Dr. Chen had said during one session. "The tough guy who doesn't need anyone, who always has it together. But that's not who you really are, and maintaining that facade is exhausting." She was right. I was exhausted. But slowly, week by week, therapy session by therapy session, I'd started to let that facade crack, started admitting when I didn't know something, when I was scared, when I needed help, started asking questions instead of making assumptions. The change at work had been subtle but significant. I'd stopped competing with Derek and started actually collaborating with him. Turned out he was a decent guy who was just as overwhelmed by the regional manager position as I would have been. We'd even gone for beers last week, and he'd confided that he felt like he was failing, drowning in responsibilities he wasn't prepared for. "Maybe you could help me," he'd said. "You've got way more experience than I do." The old me would have felt vindicated. See, he can't handle it. I should have gotten the job. The new me recognized an opportunity to be useful, to matter in a different way than I'd expected. Sure, I'd said. Let's set up a weekly check-in. I can walk you through some of the stuff that trips people up. Derek had looked genuinely grateful, and I'd realized that maybe being passed over for promotion wasn't the tragedy I'd made it out to be. Maybe there were other ways to have value, other definitions of success. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave Kowalski. Lunch this week? Want to hear about Jake's recovery? Dave had been a good friend through all of this, checking in regularly, never making me feel judged for the therapy or the changes I was making. Marcus, too. I'd been lucky in my friends, even if I hadn't always appreciated them. Yeah, sounds good, I typed back. Tuesday work? The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Maya on our front porch, holding a covered dish. I opened the door, the cold air rushing in along with a swirl of snowflakes. Maya, hi, come in. I can't stay. I'm doing meal prep for the week and accidentally made enough curry to feed 20 people. She handed me the dish, warm in my hands. Thought you guys might want some. You're a saint. Thank you. She laughed. Just a meal planner with poor portion control. How's Jake doing? Good. Really good, actually. He was just telling me about his hospital volunteering. He's wonderful with the patients, very empathetic. She hesitated. I hope I didn't overstep by suggesting it. I know you're his parents and... No, it's great. Seriously. He's found something he's passionate about, and that's partly because of you. Maya smiled, brushing snow from her coat. He's a good kid. You and Linda raised him right. I'm not sure we can take credit for that. Feels more like he turned out well, despite us. Don't sell yourself short, Tom. I've seen how you are with him lately. At his physical therapy appointments, when you come to pick him up from volunteering, you're present, you're trying. That matters. The words meant more than she probably knew. I'd spent so much time focused on my failures that I'd forgotten to notice the small successes. Hey, can I ask you something? I said. That day when Jake got hurt, do you still think about it? Her expression shifted, becoming more serious. All the time. Every time I see blood on a patient, every time I hear about a teenage trauma case, it's always there. Does it get easier? Not easier exactly, but you learn to carry it. You learn to trust that you did everything you could in that moment. She looked at me directly. Why do you ask? Because I still dream about it sometimes. The blood, the panic, the fear that I was going to lose him. And I wake up thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong, all the ways that day could have ended differently. That's normal, Maya said gently. You experienced trauma too, not just Jake. I never thought about it like that. Most people don't. But witnessing someone you love in danger, especially your child, that leaves a mark. She paused. Have you talked to your therapist about it? Some. Dr. Chen says I have some mild PTSD symptoms, nothing major, but enough that I should work through it. Good, don't ignore it. She glanced at her watch. I really do need to get back to my curry before it burns. But Tom, I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. It shows. After she left, I stood in the doorway for a moment longer, watching her navigate the snowy sidewalk back to her house. Linda came up beside me. She's really something, Linda said, echoing her words from months ago. She is. I closed the door. She said, I'm doing better, that it shows. It does. Linda leaned her head on my shoulder. You smile more now, you're less brittle. Brittle? Like you might shatter at any moment. You were like that for so long, I'd almost forgotten what you were like before. She straightened up. Want to take a walk with me? The snow is pretty. Yeah, let me grab my coat. We bundled up and headed out into the quiet neighborhood. The snow fell steadily, muffling sounds making everything soft and peaceful. We walked hand in hand, not talking much, just being together. We passed houses we'd walked by 100 times, the Johnsons' place with the elaborate Christmas decorations, the Martinez house where their kids were building a snowman in the front yard, the corner lot where old Mr. Peterson sat on his porch despite the cold, waving as we passed. "Remember when we first moved here?" Linda said. "We thought we'd raise Jake in this neighborhood, watch him grow up, maybe have another kid." "We could still have another kid." She looked at me, surprised. "We're in our mid-40s, Tom." "So, people do it. Do you want another child?" I thought about it honestly. I don't know, but I want to be the kind of person who could raise one properly, who wouldn't mess it up the way I almost messed everything up. You didn't mess everything up. You went through a hard time and made some mistakes. That's human. "Feeling like a human again is still pretty new," I admitted. "For a while there, I felt like a monster." Linda squeezed my hand. "You were never a monster, just lost." We walked in silence for a while, our breath making clouds in the cold air. At the end of the block, we turned around and headed back toward home. "I've been thinking about going back to school," Linda said suddenly, "getting my master's degree, maybe moving into administration eventually." "That's great, Lynn. You'd be amazing at that." "It would mean less income for a couple years while I'm studying, more stress on the family finances. We'll figure it out. You've supported me through a lot lately. It's my turn to support you." She smiled, and it reached her eyes in a way it hadn't for months. "When did you become so supportive?" "About 3 months and 15 therapy sessions ago." She laughed, the sound bright against the snow-muffled street. "I love you, you know. I love you too." We reached our house just as Jake was coming out the front door, bundled in his winter coat. "Where are you guys going?" "We just went for a walk," Linda said. "Where are you going?" "Tyler's. We're going to play video games and complain about our physical therapy routines." He paused. "Is that okay?" "I know I should ask first." "It's fine, honey. Be home by 9. "Thanks, Mom." He headed down the driveway, then turned back. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah? Thanks for not being weird anymore. It's nice." He said it casually, like commenting on the weather, then continued on his way. But the words settled into my chest like a warm coal. Linda and I went inside, shaking snow from our coats. The house smelled like the curry Maya had brought, warm and inviting. "I should prep that for dinner," Linda said. "Want to help?" "Sure." We worked together in the kitchen, moving around each other with the ease of 20 years of marriage. Linda chopped vegetables while I heated the curry and set the table. We talked about the holiday party at the Patels, about Jake's college plans, about Linda's graduate school applications. Normal conversation, normal evening, normal life, but better than before. More honest, more real. Later, after dinner, after Jake came home and went to bed, after Linda and I had settled in for the night, I found myself at the window again, looking out at the snow-covered street. The light was on in Maya's house. I could see her moving around in the kitchen, probably finishing up her meal prep. Rahul appeared, said something that made her laugh, and they shared a brief kiss before he headed upstairs. I thought about the first time I'd seen her, at that cookout, before I'd opened my mouth and said things I couldn't take back. I'd judged her based on nothing but assumptions and insecurity, and she'd saved my son's life anyway, not because I deserved it, not even because it made her feel good, just because it was the right thing to do, and she was the kind of person who did the right thing even when it was hard. I wanted to be that kind of person too. "What are you thinking about?" Linda asked from the bed. "Second chances," I said, "and the people who give them to us. You've made the most of yours." "I'm trying." I closed the curtain and climbed into bed beside her. "Every day I'm trying." "That's all anyone can do." She turned off her lamp, and we settled into the familiar comfort of our shared space. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing Millbrook in white, making everything clean and new. I thought about tomorrow. Another day to be better, to do better. Another day to be the man I was supposed to be, the one I'd lost somewhere along the way. Another day to be worthy of the second chance I'd been given. "Lynn," I said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, even when you had every reason to." She found my hand in the darkness. "We're in this together, Tom. Always have been." And I held her hand and listened to her breathing slow into sleep, feeling the weight and the gift of that promise. Tomorrow I would go to work and mentor Derek. I would come home and have dinner with my family. I would answer Maya's text about the party and confirm we'd be there. I would continue therapy with Dr. Chen and work through the lingering trauma of almost losing my son. Tomorrow I would be present and honest and kind. But tonight, I just lay in the darkness, holding my wife's hand, listening to the quiet house around us, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of problems or pain or struggle, but the peace that comes from knowing you're finally facing your life honestly, with all its imperfections and second chances and unexpected grace. The peace that comes from being saved by someone you wronged and spending the rest of your life trying to deserve that salvation. The peace that comes from finally becoming the man in the mirror you can respect. Outside, the snow fell softly on Maple Street, covering yesterday's footprints, making room for tomorrow's new paths. And inside our small house in Millbrook, Ohio, a family slept, imperfect healing together, still learning, still trying, still growing, still here.